Have you ever sat in an English class, understood every word the teacher said, aced all your grammar tests, only to step outside and feel like you've walked into a completely different planet? Suddenly, the English you hear on the streets, in movies or from native speakers, sounds like a high-speed secret code. I remember that feeling so vividly. It was like having all the ingredients for a cake. Flour, sugar, eggs, but no idea how to actually bake it. I could read English, I could write it, but understanding spoken English? That was my Mount Everest. A huge, terrifying mountain I wasn't sure I could climb. And the frustration? Oh, it was real. I'd nod along, pretending to understand, while inside, my brain was screaming in panic. Does any of that sound familiar to you on your learning journey? That feeling of being lost in a sea of sounds, that's where my quest began. A quest to truly hear English, to understand it effortlessly. And today, I want to share the secret I stumbled upon. The thing that changed everything for me and can for you too, is how you can master English listening through immersive podcasts. Yes, that's the core promise. And I'm going to show you how it's not just possible, but actually enjoyable. Back then, I tried everything, watching movies with subtitles, but I just end up reading, listening to news broadcasts. They were so fast, so formal, I'd get about 10% and feel even more discouraged. It felt like a chore, a constant battle. I was on the verge of believing that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't good at listening. Can you imagine how that felt? Thinking that a whole dimension of the language might always be locked away from me. Then one evening, scrolling endlessly, I stumbled upon something different. It wasn't a lesson. It wasn't a drill. It was a story, a podcast, just someone telling a tale. I clicked, not expecting much. It was a bit fast, sure, and I didn't catch every single word. But something was different. The story was interesting. The speaker's voice was engaging. I found myself leaning in, curious about what happened next. I wasn't trying to study, I was just listening. And for the first time, it didn't feel like climbing Mount Everest. It felt like a walk in a fascinating park. That was my first aha moment. The beginning of my journey into the world of immersive podcasts. What do I mean by immersive? I mean podcasts that pull you in, that create a world you can step into. Just with sound, they could be captivating stories, intriguing interviews with people sharing their passions, or even discussions about hobbies you love. The key was that they were engaging to me. My first strategy, born out of that accidental discovery, was find your flavor. Just like with ice cream, not every podcast is for everyone. I realized I had to find podcasts that genuinely excited me. For me, it started with fictional stories, then moved to interviews with artists and travelers. For you, it might be comedy, science, history, video games, anything. The more interested you are in the topic, the more your brain naturally wants to understand. It stops being a task and starts being a treat. Suddenly, my daily commute, my chores, even my walks became opportunities to dive into these worlds. I wasn't making time to study English listening. I was making time for stories I loved. And the English, it was just there, sinking in. This led me to the second crucial insight, the heart of why this works. The magic of comprehensible input. Something we talk about a lot here at the Comprehensible English Hub. It's a concept from a brilliant linguist, Krashen. Now don't worry, I'm not going to give you a dry academic lecture. Think of it like this. My early attempts at listening to super fast news were like trying to drink from a fire hose. Overwhelming, and not much actually went in. But these engaging podcasts, they were more like a steady, refreshing stream. What I understood enough to follow along, to get the gist, to enjoy the narrative. And because I was enjoying it, my brain was open, relaxed, and absorbing the language, the rhythm, the new words, almost without me noticing. It was learning, but it felt like entertainment. How cool is that? Have you ever experienced learning that felt so natural, so effortless, that you almost didn't realize it was happening? That's the magic we aim for. As I listened more, I stumbled upon my third realization: embrace imperfect understanding. This was a big one for me. Initially, I'd panic if I missed a word or a sentence. I'd stop, rewind, try to dissect it. It was exhausting and broke the immersion. But as I got lost in these podcast stories, I started to let go. I realized I didn't need to understand every single word to follow the plot or grasp the main idea. Think about it. When you listen in your native language, do you consciously process every single word, Probably not. You get the overall meaning. I started to trust my brain to fill in the gaps using context, the speaker's tone, and the narrative flow. It was liberating. It was like realizing you don't need to see every single brick to appreciate the beauty of a whole house. This approach made listening far less stressful and much more enjoyable. And the more I listened, the more I noticed something incredible happening. The English that once sounded like a blurry mess started to sharpen. Individual words began to emerge from the stream of sound. Sentence structures I would learned in books started to click in a real auditory way. I'd hear an idiom in a podcast, one I'd maybe seen written down but never truly got, and suddenly in context, narrated by an engaging voice, it would just make sense. It was like little light bulbs going off in my head, one after another. Oh, so that's how you use that phrase. Or, I recognize that word, but I've never heard it pronounced like that before. These weren't forced learning moments. They were joyful discoveries, like finding little treasures hidden in the stories. This naturally led to my fourth strategy. Consistency is your superpower. It wasn't about listening for 5 hours straight one day and then nothing for a week. It was about making it a small, consistent part of my life. Maybe 15 minutes on the bus, 20 minutes while cooking dinner, half an hour before bed. Because the podcasts were enjoyable, this wasn't a burden. It became a ritual I looked forward to. And just like exercising a muscle, this regular gentle exposure built up my listening strength over time, almost without me noticing the effort. We as learners often underestimate the power of small, consistent steps. But trust me, when it comes to language, they add up to giant leaps. There was this one podcast, a travelogue series. The host had such a vivid way of describing places. I remember listening to an episode about a bustling market in Marrakesh. He wasn't just saying it was crowded and noisy. He was describing the smell of spices, the calls of the vendors, the bright colors of the textiles, the feeling of the sun on his skin. My English wasn't perfect, but his storytelling was so rich I could almost see it, smell it. I was completely immersed. And in that moment, I wasn't a struggling English learner. I was an adventurer exploring a Moroccan souk alongside him. Can you imagine how this insight changed things for me? That day, I realized that mastering English listening through immersive podcasts wasn't just about understanding words. It was about connecting with experiences, with emotions, with cultures. This brings me to a surprising little twist I discovered. My fifth realization, if you will. Listen slightly above your level, but with joy. Krashen calls this I+1, input. That's just a little bit beyond your current understanding. If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get frustrated. Remember my fire hose analogy? The trick I found with podcasts was finding those that challenged me just enough. I wouldn't understand everything, but I'd understand enough to stay engaged, and the new words or phrases I encountered felt like exciting puzzles to solve within the context of the story, not impossible barriers. And because I was genuinely interested, I was motivated to stretch my understanding. It was a gentle stretch, not a painful strain. And the feeling of successfully navigating a slightly more complex episode, pure gold for my confidence. My personal transformation was, well, it was huge. It wasn't just about my listening skills, though those skyrocketed. I went from anxiously nodding and pretending to actively participating in conversations, from shying away from spoken English to seeking it out. Movies became more enjoyable. Understanding song lyrics became easier, and talking to native speakers felt less like a test and more like a genuine connection. The fear was replaced by curiosity, then by confidence. It was like a whole new layer of the world had opened up to me. Imagine unlocking a new sense. That's what it felt like. The English language was no longer an academic subject confined to textbooks. It became a living, breathing thing, a tool for connection, for entertainment, for understanding the world and the amazing people in it. This journey, this process of discovery is exactly what we champion here at the Comprehensible English Hub. We believe that learning English, especially mastering something as crucial as listening, shouldn't feel like a battle. It should feel like an adventure, an exploration, fueled by engaging stories and content that speaks to you. It's about harnessing that incredible power of comprehensible input the Krashen way, made simple and genuinely fun. So if you're out there feeling that same frustration I once did, if spoken English feels like an unbreakable code, I want you to remember this. You can master English listening through Immersive Podcast. Start by finding your flavor. Seek out podcasts that genuinely excite you. Remember the magic of comprehensible input. Let the language wash over you in an enjoyable, understandable way. Embrace imperfect understanding. Focus on the story, not every single word. Know that consistency is your superpower. Little and often works wonders. And dare to listen slightly above your level with joy. Let curiosity pull you forward. This isn't just about passing an exam or ticking a box. It's about unlocking a richer experience of the world. It's about connecting with people, with stories, with ideas on a deeper level. My journey from a frustrated listener to someone who finds joy and ease in spoken English wasn't overnight. But it started with that one click, that one story, that one immersive podcast. What's the first step you take inspired by this? What kind of stories or topics ignite your curiosity? I encourage you to explore, to experiment, and to find those podcasts that will not only help you master English listening, but will also make the journey an absolute pleasure. Here at the Comprehensible English Hub family, we're all about that journey. Thanks for letting me share mine with you. Now go find your story.